I see we're all fans of mutants here. Well, here are some more folks that have powers that I don't think you should underestimate if you know what's good for you. One of Marvel's most prominent young X-Men is Genesis, the clone of one of the team's greatest enemies. Being a clone of Apocalypse has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling this little guy to alter his form at will. He's able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment, such as a lot of sharp things and things you can bludgeon with for combat. You can also get like rocket boots for flight. Speaking of transformative powers, he's able to alter his body to change in size. He can become extremely malleable, like he can elongate his limbs to lengths similar to Mr. Fantastic. Genesis can regenerate from serious injury. Remember when he got gashed by Daken's claws? Also, he can adjust his body to apparently any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. So he was given an inkling of his parental figure's celestial force to strengthen their bond as father and son, and his control over such is not to the level of his donor, but he can utilize it to a marginal extent, beyond just defensive batteries. At the end of the day, Evan has the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power, having once showcased fire or plasma breath. So where is he now? What are we doing with him? Well, in New Mutants they did mention that he wasn't resurrected, because at the time, no, we don't resurrect clones. However, that same storyline saw the Five object and just start resurrecting clones with unique identities. So they were like, yeah, we brought back Gabby Kinney, Scout, Honey Badger. And the Five did mention Evan by name in their reasons for doing these resurrections. So is he coming back? Maybe? Possibly. I think he should. Elixir might not be as popular or well known as favorites like Wolverine and Beast, but he doesn't really mind. Technically, he's way more powerful than either of them. The Omega level mutant has the ability to heal just about any condition while in his golden form, both in himself and in others. He even has the ability to cure the devastating anti-mutant legacy virus. He can also cause painful boils, crazy tumors. He can also kill somebody by touching them, which, it's okay, I don't need a hug. Banshee is one of the older X-Men, both in terms of his age and when he was introduced in the comics. And he has the ability to fly and unleash punishing sonic screams that can disable his enemy's hearing. And once again, when turned up to an 11, his scream can flat out liquefy you. Along with Thunderbird, Sean Cassidy was one of the first of the all-new, all-different X-Men. Although he had technically earlier encountered the team as a villain, but he was too much of a sweetheart to remain a villain for long, and eventually joined the team, turning on and helping to fight his cousin, Black Tom Cassidy, and his pal, the Juggernaut. Sean was somewhat depowered here and there, but remained an important member of the X family, spending much of his time with Moira McTaggart on Moira Island. Also, his daughter Siren eventually joined the fold, after a start in supervillainy of course, because like father, like daughter. One of the few positively portrayed Muslim characters in the comic book world, Dust is a young woman with the mutant power to turn into sand, which at the beginning you're like, okay, what does sand do? Well, let's see. She can turn into a sandstorm and then scrape all the flesh from her enemies' bodies. Yeah, I don't want to underestimate that. A number of superheroes have the ability to teleport through space, so that's not what makes magic special. No, what makes her special is the ability to teleport through both time and space. And her powers as a sorceress. Oh, and her magic armor, and her ability to form psionic shields, and her creation of the soul sword. I could go on and on forever, but I think I've made my point. A relatively more recent addition to the Uncanny X-Men, Oya has the ability to manipulate the flow of heat, which means she can create fire in one place while simultaneously creating ice in another, with one of her eyes glowing ice blue and the other glowing fire orange. Sadly, the first time she uses her powers, her village burns down, so as a result, she is branded as a witch, her family is killed, and being a strongly religious character, she believes she's a monster, that her powers are blasphemy. But they're absolutely incredible, and accidents happen. While we don't know too much about Sage's true origins, and I want to know more, we do know a lot about her incredible powers. Simply put, she is a super genius, with a brain more powerful than any computer in the world. She can come up with the perfect plan in an instant, learn just about any skill, and engage in telepathy. She can even read another mutant's genetic code, and at great personal risk, allow her body to evolve similarly. Like, that is so cool. Eva Bell is also a fairly new addition to the greater X-Men universe. She made her first appearance in the all-new X-Men in 2013. She was arguably the most fascinating new mutant created by Brian Michael Bendis during his time writing X-Men books. She had all the trappings of the typical manic pixie dream girl. She was smart, snarky, beautiful, into cool music. And while her power set was not clearly defined when Cyclops first appeared to recruit her for his new team, she would later surprise readers and her fellow teammates. The time-traveling Eva Bell is one of the most powerful mutants the X-Men have ever encountered. Taking up the codename Tempest, Eva utilizes her mutant power of chronokinesis, the ability to create time bubbles and travel through timelines and alternate realities in an almost Omega level capacity. During a two-part story arc in the pages of Uncanny X-Men Annual 1 and All New X-Men Annual 1, Eva travels through different timelines, meeting the team from the series X-Men 2099, the Rawhide Kid, and a myriad of other characters who operate outside and within Marvel's main Earth 616 timeline. Eva goes on to experience years while in this time shift, going as far as to fall in love and give birth before finding herself back at the point from where she began her journey. Like, for most characters, all this power would have driven them mad, but Tempest only grew stronger. Monet, Yvette, Clarice, Maria, Therese, Saint Croix, that's a mouthful, or M for short, comes from an extremely wealthy aristocratic family, if you couldn't tell, and doesn't really have a lot of chill when it comes to wearing this fact on her sleeve, like literally. She loves designer brands, she's gorgeous, she's like a model, but don't let that whole appearance fool you. She is one of the most physically strong X-Men. She possesses superhuman speed, strength, reflexes, vision, and hearing. She's also got supersonic flight, telekinesis, telepathy, healing. Oh, and by the way, genius level intellect. Basically, she is almost perfect in every conceivable way, kind of like Mary Poppins. She is as close to a Superman that the X-Men have. Granted, this near perfection is not without faults, but those faults make her so tough. She's got some siblings, and they're not so beautiful or well put together. As a matter of fact, her brother Marius is kind of like her biggest foil. During the criminally underrated run on Generation X, M merged with her brother as M-Plate, but after a confrontation, M was able to escape her parasitic brother's grasp and return to her old self. So the battle pretty much solidified that there may not be another villain that could give her a run for her money, which makes her an incredible superhero. Poor Doug Ramsey never stood a chance. As the mutant Cypher, he was often cited as the least popular member of the New Mutants. Artists hated to draw him because his power was just understanding and translating any language. Clever writers did use this to great effect, especially as Cypher became more involved, but the fandom at large really was like, he's C-list, unless he's merged with his alien buddy, Warlock. When it came to combat, there wasn't much for him to do other than to take cover and hope his teammates kept everything at bay. Unless the New Mutants were battling a group of experts during trivia night, Doug wasn't really much use. Eventually, after a decent amount of fan and creator outcry, Cypher met his demise in New Mutants issue 60, but that wasn't the end for this human Rosetta Stone. During the Necroshade storyline, it got to the point where Doug was actually resurrected through the transmode virus and had a better understanding of his mutant power, despite being dead for a couple of decades. So when Doug arrives at the doorstep of his old New Mutant teammates, he's met with a mix of open arms and trepidation. The reunion is brief and anything but sweet, and he takes out his entire team in hand-to-hand combat. Turns out that aside from spoken and written language, Doug can read body language, and then he uses this to turn the attacks of his former teammates against them. Basically, he fights like Neo from the Matrix, and it looks so cool, and also like, it's okay, I like you, I've always liked you. Well, that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa, thanks for part 2, and let me know if you want part 3.